Alright, so today we're taking a look at the Aldi Workzone Helping Hands with a magnifying glass, and at the special price of $2.99. So I'll take a look at that. I just picked that up the other day. I have always, I do a lot of soldering and wiring work. Both these are PC side of things, or the PC maintenance side of things, from just some power cables, some Molex stuff just to use for an example, but obviously in the RC modelling side of things as well, I have to do a lot of wire soldering as well, again, which this kind of thing will come in useful for. And I've always been looking to pick one up, but I never really seem to get around to doing it. What I usually tend to do is just put the wire in a vise and then use one hand and then the other hand with the soldering iron, and seem to kind of get a hold of the solder with one of the other hands as well, and always managed to do it that way, and I just never really got around to it. But for the sake of, they've always really been around, like between £5 and £10, haven't they? I saw this one, like I say, $2.99, so I thought, well, I'll just chuck it in. It's going to be of use at that price. So I'll take a look at that. What we want to look at, really, it's pretty basic, but what we really want to look at is, does it wobble? Do they lock? Do all these wing nut hinged parts lock all right, and they're not floppy and flapping around all right, like a lot of cheap things tend to be? Right, so really what we want to check is how wibble wobble Jonathan Ross it is. Wibbly wobbly. It's quite tight. They do seem to lock. So obviously you've got wing nuts on each of the joints. The tighter they are, the more stiff it should be. Again, I emphasise the word stiff because a lot of cheap things, you lock it down and it flaps all over the place. That's what we're trying to achieve here. Let's check if it's okay when you actually lock it down. It actually does stay relatively locked down. I mean, even just trying to undo the wing nut, I can move the ball joint at the bottom, but it's not, it doesn't, if I shake that now, it doesn't really flap about. Good if I really give it some stick, but I haven't. It's not, I haven't tightened it down either. This is just how it is out of the packet. So you can always tighten it down a lot better than that. The stand seems to have this two-footed piece on the one side. It's just flat on the other. It's just mounted into the. It's a bit of cast. This stand or foot, and it seems to be just. I don't think there's a thread on there. I think it's just forced into that. So we got the bottom piece, which you really want that butt to set that ball joint there. Tighten that down as best as you can do. It's got like a flat piece there if you want to hold that with your fingers, or use a pair of pliers to hold that still. Tighten that up as best as you can. Like I say, this one has got a magnifying glass as well, so it does make your soldering easier, or whatever. You don't necessarily have to use it for soldering work or wire work. You can use it for anything else that you want to hold in there and do, as an extra pair of hands. Right, okay, so basically we've got our helping hands set up with our two wires, theoretically what we're going to solder together. And what you would do obviously on each wire is remove the insulation from each wire, and you'd have the exposed copper wiring. And then what this does, holding them in place with the alligator clips. So frees up both of your hands, so you can then use your soldering iron freely, and then you can come in with your solder and solder the joint. Also, what it can do, you put your shrink wrap on first, and obviously move it a bit further out of the way down one of the wires. You can heat up that joint with the shrink wrap and cover up the joint afterwards as well, and you haven't got you've got your hands free for that. So that's basically what this works for. Obviously, the magnifying glass helps you see what you're doing a bit better as well. Helps you check on the solder, or if you've got impaired vision or something, you know, you can do it. If you're an amputee or you've got a disability and you can only really use one arm or one hand, obviously again they'll help you in that situation. There's a pair of helping hands, which is, you know, what they're called. Or if you just injured yourself, and you say you've broken your wrist, and anything that you usually like to do with this that you can't do because your wrist broke. Well, we won't go into what you might like to do with a broken that you can't with a broken wrist. But in regard to the soldering, anyway. So pretty basic. I think can't really describe too much about it. I just wanted to see if it wasn't a bunch of junk that flaps about when you move it around, and they do all lock up fine, etc. And it seems to be okay. The magnifying glass seems to work, although I'd be careful with it because this is a very thin piece of sheet metal that runs around the outside, and if you knock that, or you're too heavy-handed with it, as you can see there, where it starts to you can see where it's just exposed there at the bottom, where it starts to come and bend away a little bit. If you give that a knock, I'm just concerned that might pop out and land on the floor and maybe break, so I'd be a bit careful about that. But otherwise, fairly straightforward. It does what it says on the tin. As you can see there, the magnifying glass, as I move it away, it's still keeping the joint where you'd be soldering and the two wires fairly focused up close. So you can really see. So if you're hard of vision with your sight, that where you're getting on a bit, as people say, the vision starts being a bit impaired, and you can still carry on with your soldering. So the fact that they're starting to include the magnifying glass on them now is is a good thing rather than not. Yeah, it tends to do exactly what it says it does on the tin. The one thing, like I said, I was just afraid that it was going to be a floppy, flappy, wibble wobble mess. But no, it's okay, it's fine. So nothing else really much more to say about that. They appear from time to time. Let's say this one was $2.99 not so long ago now, and I picked this up. Maybe might be the same price. It might be even cheaper the next time it appears. I don't know. But if you see one, they're perfectly fine to put in your toolkit.